Hello, and welcome to the HR Exchange podcast. My name is David Rice. I'm the editor of the HR Exchange Network and your host as always. Today's show is actually my last as the editor of the HR Exchange Network. I've been offered a new opportunity and have decided to take on a new challenge. But don't worry though, this doesn't mean the end of the podcast necessarily. I'm sure the next editor will step in, take it over, and do an amazing job with it. For my final act here, I had an interview all lined up with an attorney, and we were going to dig into some really juicy employment law topics. But in the end, we just couldn't make it work with the schedules. So instead, I've gone back to the inbox and the Twitter account and found some questions that have come in for our Ask the Editor episodes. So I might as well clean those out before I go. I'll take one last crack at them and have a bit of fun, and we'll keep it short today. But before I get started, I do always like to remind people to subscribe to the podcast on their favorite podcast listening app. If you can leave us a review, all that helps other listeners find the podcast easier, and we still want to build an audience. I'm sure your next host will love to see all the feedback and the reach we've established with the show. As always, if you like the content we produce at HR Exchange Network, sign up for the newsletter by visiting hrexchangenetwork.com. You'll get all the details on the latest content produced on the site, as well as information on upcoming events, webinars, reports, and more. That's hrexchangenetwork.com to sign up. I might sound a little bit different today. I'm in a different room. So I usually do this in an office. I'm in kind of like a family room type area, so I apologize if there's an echo, if you hear my dogs walking through the room. But I'll just get straight into it then. I usually read the names of people who send in questions, but some of these came in randomly through the HR Exchange Network Twitter account, and I don't have the names right here in front of me, so I'll just focus on the question. But the first one asks, as the Great Resignation continues to be a concern for many organizations, companies must reassess their employee experience offerings and meet workers' needs to maintain them. How should we be going about trying to keep employees? We did a show about the Great Resignation a few weeks back with Steve Cadigan. It's been a big hit on YouTube especially. It's episode 69 if you're looking for it in the feed. But he said something that really stuck with me. He pointed out that maybe you shouldn't be looking to retain people at all. Maybe you should just be looking to help them grow, and if they move on, kind of so be it. Those weren't his exact words. I'm summing it up very crudely in a sentence there. But if everyone was developing their people the way they need to, the talent marketplace will have what you're looking for. But also you'd have a lot of really engaged employees who feel like they're valued and that they're getting more than just a paycheck at work. People will either stay or go based on what though? Whether or not they feel they're treated fairly, whether or not they are compensated fairly, find the work engaging, understand their place in the business, and the list goes on and on and on, right? There's so many factors, and some of them you can't even control. So it's kind of like, stop trying to control all of them. You have to accept what you can influence, and that there's pay and benefit structure, and there's the culture around them and the processes tied to the work that they do. Those are all things that you can control. But if someone takes a job in marketing and they just aren't a numbers person, or they think advertising is a bunch of nonsense, it could just be that they don't want to work in marketing. And people do that all the time because they see what something pays, or they need work and they can get that job. But there's not much that you can do about that if they don't find it engaging just at a base level. It could just be, it's no longer what they want for their career. Maybe they started down that road, but they've since felt like, no, I don't want to do this anymore. But they feel boxed in because they've got a lot of experience in it. And maybe people are disengaging because of stress in their home lives. You never know. You can't influence all of it, and you shouldn't even try. Just work on the things that you can, engage with them regularly around their goals and desires, and show them that you respect and value them both as team members and as human beings. If you've got a culture of positivity and candor, a growth mindset as an organization, a good communication strategy, and fair compensation, the rest sometimes, or a lot of the time, will kind of take care of itself. I wrote an article this week following a LinkedIn thread that I came across around fluffy office perks dying. And I think the biggest thing I'd say to companies going forward from this moment is don't go down that road again of investing in a bunch of fluff, that doesn't make your people better at what they do, or at the very least, make them better people. There's too much work to be done, and more important things that they could be doing around, DEI efforts or learning. Why waste time with ping pong tables and beer taps? If employees want to grab a drink together, it's perfectly fine for you as a company to insist that they do that outside of working hours at some kind of, happy hour. It doesn't need to be what's going on in the break room for sure. And it's, it's just not something that the talent that you want is going to base its decision to stay or go on. So really, I think, just sit with that word experience for a while. Think about, what shapes an experience? What influences it? What does it consist of? What makes it good or bad? Just make as many positive changes as you can. It's an oversimplification, I'm sure, but it's maybe the best answer I've got after spending a year talking to HR people who view employee experience in wildly different ways at times. All right. Question 2, also focused on employee experience. This one says, when talking about the employee experience, tons of workers are leaving their jobs to pursue work-life balance and independence. How can companies help in these efforts? And is work-life balance still in existence with the temptations of work technology at our fingertips at all times? I think by assists, they mean what can we do about this? This is a good question. I think it's something that L&D teams may have to develop training around, especially with regard to remote workers. I think it's blurred those personal and professional lines so much. It's difficult to know when to switch off. I'll be honest, in my time here, I planned 6 or 7 events and found that I was checking my LinkedIn constantly in search of speakers, talking with speakers. I really struggled at first to create a boundary there of when to turn off. Some of us, it's the nature of our work that we rarely shut off, but others, I think the working conditions of the last year have put us in a place where this is more common, even if our job doesn't demand that of us. Companies are going to have to be more insistent and supportive to make sure employees know how and when to draw those lines. It's going to be vital in preventing burnout and employees simply just checking out of the job emotionally. So part of it is just highlighting and talking about the value of a healthy work-life balance. People feel like they have it, they don't have to go in search of it. Now, independence, that can be a bit tougher. No group of people has struggled with the autonomy employees have had over the last year the way managers have. We've really got to train managers how to manage in this environment, how to measure a person's success or effectiveness without needing to see them in front of them all the time. It's the nature of the beast. No one wants to be micromanaged in person, but in a remote environment, nothing will have them on LinkedIn quicker or searching for the next thing, than the feeling that someone's looking over their shoulder when they're in their own home. So yeah, I think those areas, training around setting boundaries and helping managers support independence are just 2 things I'd be looking at to ensure people don't feel like they have to go looking for balance or independence somewhere else. Okay, our final question. This one came into the inbox from a listener named John Price. He says, there is a common misconception that a journey without a purpose is a good thing. I understand that journeys don't always have destinations, and many times there is joy in the quote-unquote road less traveled. However, the journey DEI initiatives take is never clearly explained. And he has, in parentheses there, why not DIE initiatives? There is lots of verbal gymnastics and feel-good rhetoric, but what is the purpose? Will it just contribute to further tribalism and division? Okay. These are my favorite questions, indeed. As you'll know, I'm a believer in DEI efforts. I think they're incredibly important to the future of the workforce and the workplace. But let's start at why not DIE? Well, for one thing, as a content professional, I don't recommend it because it spells the word die, as in death, and that is what people will see when they read your diversity, inclusion, and equity philosophy. It's not a positive association there. So just wouldn't do it from an optics standpoint. But also, secondly, I think, equity is a relatively recent addition to the conversation of diversity and inclusion, and I'm not sure that people understand how crucial it is yet. Equity is the policies that ensure everyone can thrive in the workplace, right? It's not just how you treat people, but what their opportunity looks like. And if you want engaged, productive employees from all backgrounds, you'd better start addressing that piece. Now, to the point about it being without a journey without a purpose. Saying it's a journey, not a destination, is not the same thing as saying it's a rudderless voyage. For a long time, diversity was viewed almost like a quota, right? Get this many black and brown faces in, and voila, we're hitting goals, we're making a difference, and arriving at the point that we need to be at. But the phrase journey, not a destination, it's meant to discourage this type of thinking, because actually getting to where a lot of companies need to go on the DEI front is going to be a long road and an ongoing effort to educate, rethink our processes around talent acquisition, management, performance measurement, etc. Well, how all those things are conducted. There's no quick fix at this point, And actually communicating the purpose, measuring the success, and explaining where you are on that journey is a big point of discussion right now, and one that you ought to get in on as a skeptic of them. Check out some of our content from our D&I focused event, because some of it was aimed at those type things. One thing I think you might have an issue with is if you're going into these discussions or sessions or whatever, anything focused on DEI, if you're going into it and you're using language like verbal gymnastics and feel-good rhetoric, those tell me that you're probably not going into it with your eyes, ears, and heart open. I talked with Patty Dingle. She's the head of D&I for the Americas at BNY Mellon during this last event about intentionality. And I think beyond supporters of DEI, skeptics also need to think about their intentionality when they look at DEI too. If you're looking to poke holes in something, you will. If, on the other hand, you come in without an agenda and you try to understand something, you might actually start to see some value in it and even contribute something useful to it. And that would be much more productive than simply doubting efficacy, and it would go a long way toward relieving the organization of any hints of tribalism or division. As for that part, if your DEI efforts are furthering tribalism and division, I think you've got to recognize the bigger issue there. If they're furthering it, it means it's there to begin with, and no matter what, that's an issue you need to attempt to address. I'd start there instead of worrying about the possibility that genuine efforts to be inclusive will somehow divide. And on that note, you've all probably heard enough from me for a while. So it's been fun, a true learning experience. I've enjoyed diving so deeply into the world of HR, and for those of you who have connected with me on LinkedIn, don't hesitate to keep in touch. Until we meet again, stay safe out there.